Hi, Brad.
Hi, Boyd. Welcome here. It's good to see you.
Yeah, yeah. I've been looking forward to visiting with you about where we are here at Come and See, and I I love having your input into it. It's been a wonderful blessing for me.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited about this project. So for people who will see this on Clarion, they have seen perhaps ads here and there about come and see, but maybe you could just describe that for us. What
Yeah,
is this project?
yeah. Well, I've told the story of Jesus for 50 something years in some shape, form, or fashion. And I just recently got into doing audio drama and realized that there's a way to do surround sound where you can hear sounds all around you and feel like you're in the scene. So I thought, why not do that with the life of Jesus and drop a listener in the middle of the scene so that you feel like you're actually part of it. And I designed it so that you hear voices that some of them are very close to you. So you realize they're kind of, in a way, narrating, not really a typical narration, but they're saying what's going on. So you know, but then your own imagination can build the world along with the sounds, the sound effects that I've put in. That was the impetus to do it, and then once I got into it, I realized how um, kind of a new thing this is because in other words, why tell a story? Why tell the story of Jesus again? And it's been told so many ways. How could you do it differently? And I don't know anybody that's doing it this way. Uh,
It, yeah, the immersive element is so striking, and I know there will be people who want to listen to it like an audiobook as they're commuting, but when you really put headphones on, what's remarkable about the technology is there is voices and sounds from every direction and discernibly different distances,
mhm.
and you pick up the movement of that, and what it does is it really throws you into that world, and you've called it an immersive experience, and that's really a perfect term for it. And my sense is, part of my deal is I'm a New Testament scholar, and
Mhm.
I've taught Gospels for a long time. And one thing that Pope Benedict the 16th said about the Gospels was that they were deliberately written to lead you into an encounter.
Right.
And and as such, they were initially meant to be spoken word. They were meant to be heard, not just read and parsed and sliced up and put
Mhm.
on a sort of dissected, but rather that you would have an encounter. And
Right.
I feel like you've taken the very intent of the original gospel writers, um, and renewed that in what some would think about like the Ignatian exercises, for
Right.
example, where Ignatius of Loyola, he had established what was called well, we call it the Jesuits now, but it was the Society of Jesus. And the way they did that was you would you would enter the stories with all five senses, um, twice, all four gospels, at least once a week. But you'd close your eyes and you would hear this and go there. And so this is that. And I think this is sort of next level Ignatian, if we would want to put it that way.
Right. Well, I appreciate that because that's really the idea. I have a feeling that we have we've filtered the life of Jesus so much. We've redacted it. Whether we're believers or not, people know sayings here and there, and they know stories here and there. But and I'm not saying believe, especially believers. Many believers have read it all the way through, but to experience it as an overarching story and not just listen, not just read it on the page, but to experience it. That's that's my main goal, and which is one of the reasons why uh, I've decided to do every word and every action that is recorded in the four gospels, um, and put that in the story somewhere. Because most of the time, when you hear the story of Jesus or see it in a film or wherever, you you just get a portion. You don't get the whole thing. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And that's where you've come in so handy, because I'm trying to contextualize it,
Hmm.
uh, so that it makes sense. And what I've been able to do with you, which is, it really has been helpful to, when I write a scene or several scenes, and then I send them to you, you give me some feedback, and that's always, it just kind of takes it to a little different level for me. So I really appreciate that. Um,
I've enjoyed that. I mean, for me, the process is wonderful because I always, because I've read the Gospels so many times, I don't want familiarity with them to breed contempt or
mhm,
minimize, and somehow anything that makes it fresh for me is
yes.
wonderful. And what was remarkable, it really is this idea that I'm not just having an audio experience, I'm having an emotional experience of being on a journey. And maybe you fully understand this journey element of it, feels like you do, but certainly that's, as a listener, I feel like I'm on a road. Where are we going now, Jesus? And
Hmm.
that's been just extremely helpful.
Yeah, and that, in fact, it's interesting because the guy who does the soundtrack, Brian Hunley, when when I first sent him the very first sections of it, he wanted to get a feel for it, and he said that's what he felt listening, because these are just guys walking. They're just trying to trying to follow this guy, and and I think that's where he began with the soundtrack, just kind of a feel of a journey. And I
It's
hope that.
really surprising because it's one episode after another after another after another, and I've used the Jesus way as a phrase to talk about that Jesus is the way and that we're on the way and he has a way to live. Uh, but the element of this is like, no, like it's literally we're going from this town to this town and from this person to this person. And I think that brings out also, I've coined a word.
Mhm,
Instead of responsibility, it's responsibility. So the responsiveness of Jesus to those he encounters on the way in the context of love. I think I picked that up from Paul Young, actually, the author of The
mhm,
Shack. It's
mhm,
this responsibility of Jesus. It's just another way of saying responsiveness, but he's responding both um, to in, in what you've produced. You hear him responding to the people he's ministering to, responding to his disciples, sometimes explaining to them, sometimes just bewildering them, but most of all, responsiveness to the leading of the Spirit and the heart of his Abba, and
mhm.
it really comes through.
Yeah, it's been so exciting for me, because I've like you, I've read the Gospels so many times, but how many times have we put ourselves in the place of each of those disciples? And I have to do that to write it. I have to say, okay, what would Nathaniel, what would he be thinking right now? If he interjects a line, it has to come from his. And so I've had to live in each one of them,
Mm.
and that's kind of cool. And not just the 12, but um, we have some, and we're just kind of beginning to introduce some of these important women, which is that's an amazing part of the gospel story, is the way Jesus interacted with the women and how they grabbed a hold of the message probably a lot earlier than the guys did.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so, and of course, the most important woman, Mary, I mean, she's already played quite a bit of a role throughout what we've already recorded and produced, and the actress that does that is just phenomenal.
You're talking Mary, the mother of Jesus,
Mary,
right?
mother. Yeah.
What I loved about that is, with the four gospels, you get different voices, right? So traditionally, at least, Matthew, we have the perspective of Matthew, and Mark, we have the perspective of Peter. John, we have the perspective of John. My Luke tells us at the beginning of his gospel that he's gone around and he's asked a lot of people, but you get a lot of stories about Mary in Luke that you could only know from Mary herself.
Right.
And
Right.
how would Luke know this? He had to have talked to her probably when she was living in Ephesus with John,
Hmm.
so I love that you're bringing the women's voices into it, because really her, but in the East we call her the mother of God, because who
Hmm.
was in her womb? Is this just a man in her womb? But also Mary Magdalene, we call her the apostle to the apostles, because really
Right.
she's the first eyewitness of the risen Lord. And
Hmm.
so we have great affection for these women, and it comes through their importance in the story.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it's been exciting for me to live in each one of these characters, and not of course you hear the words of Jesus, and I've tried my best to not have Jesus say much more than what he says in the Gospels, because there's a lot there.
Yeah.
There are a few lines here and there that I don't think anybody's going to argue with. He could have said that, um, but that's the deal. Um,
How did you manage the problem of harmonization? Because I mean, it's
oh,
just impossible at one level.
it is.
How did you approach that?
It's totally impossible, really. Anybody that's ever tried it, it can't be done. So what I've done is I've had to make some choices. And
Hmm.
when there's a story where there are differences, and there are quite a few differences in the number of blind men, or when something happened, that the biggest one, of course, is the cleansing of the temple. It begins in the first of John's, and later in the synoptics, near the end. And I chose just to choose the one at the end. I'm not going to do it twice.
Hmm.
There are some people that think it happened twice. I kind of doubt it, but
Yeah, that's a real minority view, and I think John is making a point, a theological
mhm,
point, by putting it up front. But if we're going to deal with this chronologically, that's not his concern.
right.
But it's a big deal in the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, where it is the launch of Passion Week, really. You've got
Mhm,
him, the
right.
triumphal entry. He goes into the temple, he overthrows the table, drives out the money changers, and really makes space for people to come. And he basically is healing sick people who shouldn't even be in the temple all
Right.
week long.
Uh-huh.
And then ultimately, it is the temple guards, the Levites, who come arrest him in Gethsemane on the basis of what? Well, violations of the temple,
Mhm,
and that's
mhm.
that was their job. Just doing my
Yeah.
job, resting the Son of God, but whatever.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's been difficult at times to try to put all of it together, and I've still got a lot to go. I've written up through about a third of the second volume. So I've got the first volume is written and recorded and still being produced. I've got one more chapter, I think, to produce there. And then written maybe about a third to a fourth of the second volume. So there's still a lot to go.
How
Uh,
many volumes is this in the end?
so there's three.
Three
So
volumes.
yeah, it's like right now, if somebody gets it, there are four chapters that are already produced and ready. Um, there's one more chapter for the first volume, and then there'll be at least, I'd say, 10 or 12 more chapters, which are about 25 to 30 minutes, maybe something like that.
Okay. What
Mhm.
what can you tell us anything about the voice actors you've got? They've just been a
Wow.
delight.
Yeah, there are, like I said, the one playing Miriam, Mary, the mother of Jesus. She's from New York City, and is an actress there, she's a pretty popular book narrator, and just does a bang up job. It's been amazing to me. In fact, when I first heard her, when I was getting the auditions, I heard her audition, and that made me more excited, I think, about the project than anything I had heard, because
Oh,
this just she just takes you in. The one playing Jesus is from Great Britain, um, and has a little bit of a Middle Eastern in his background, which helps. In fact, that's one thing that listeners do need to know. All of my voices do at least a slight Middle Eastern accent, and that was on purpose because when I first started getting auditions, I wasn't asking for that, and somebody sent one in with it. There was a guy that. In fact, he didn't even end up. I never even heard from him again. But he sent me an audition, and he was doing a Middle Eastern accent. And I thought, well, that immerses even more because it takes you to
yeah.
the world.
Yeah, instead of like, I mean, the classic was so many of the movies that you want to get a certain amount of gravitas or something, and
Right.
you so then they're all British,
Exactly.
reminding you that this is Shakespearean, and that's not what you really we want.
Right.
We want this to be
Right.
like I'm there, and I
Yeah.
like your phrase that about the Miriam actress. Um, she takes you in.
Yeah.
That's sort of the point. Come and see. I want to be an
Yes.
eyewitness of this through my
Exactly.
ears. It is remarkable how almost impossible it is not to see the story as well as hear it, right? You know,
Yes. Yes.
you yes, we provide the images, but the sounds demand
Mhm.
that I provide the images. And we're not just talking voices. I think I hear other sounds in there. I've heard birds, and
Oh
what else
yes.
do you got going?
Oh yeah. There's birds. Of course, there's water. There's the
Mm,
when they're at
the storms.
yeah. Oh yeah. The storm. Have you heard the one with the storm yet?
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. That was fun to do because I the storm on the sea. It had to be big, and how frantic the disciples got. And here's Jesus just waking up and touching the wind and saying shalom, be
Yeah.
still. Um, so that's an amazing thing. But yeah, there's of course wind. There's uh, the the seaport. When they're at Capernaum, that's right there on the Sea of Galilee. So you hear the birds, you hear the water, you hear some other boats. So it's all there. But the thing about seeing it, here's what's interesting. Everybody's going to see it differently.
Yep.
When I'm not forcing them to see a particular kind of Jesus or a particular kind of a picture of anything.
Yep.
They can imagine it, and I believe God can use that. I believe,
I do too. I think it's one of the real advantages of audio over movies and video is because it engages your own senses and stimulates your own vision. But okay, it could also be you get visions.
yeah,
I'm enough of a small C charismatic
uh-huh,
to think that, you know, that
yeah,
is, am I seeing what I'm painting, or am I seeing something the Holy Spirit's painting? And
right,
maybe we're doing, I think Paul says to the Corinthians, anyone who turns to Christ is united with Christ. Your spirit and his spirit become one. So in a sense, it's a collaboration
mhm,
of our hearts and God's heart. And
yeah,
you're facilitating it in this incredible way.
yeah. Well, I hope so. And of course, the reason I call it "Come and See" for those who haven't heard, the very first scene is where there are disciples that are listening to John the Baptist preaching, and Jesus comes by, and of course, he tells them, "Come and see." When they
Yeah.
say, "Where are you staying?" Come and see, and that becomes a constant phrase throughout the thing. Come and see, and that's the reason why I'm doing it. I want people to see. I want them to, through their ears and closing their eyes, see something that they've never seen before, and
Mm.
that's that entire life of Jesus. So that's it.
I'm stoked about this. I want people to hear it, get it. And so what can we tell them about
Okay.
how do we find this? And what do you
Yes.
want to say about
Yes.
that today?
Yeah. Of course, it's comeandseeaudio.com. They can go on there. And of course, we can put links to this. But comeandseeaudio.com. And on there's in order to get a taste, I'm offering the free first chapter. You can download the first chapter, which is about 20 something minutes, and you can hear the kind of what happened, the process. You hear the rest of it's going to sound like, and then you can order the rest. And right now, typically the rest is $20 for the entire pre-ordering the entire thing. So
All three volumes?
all three volumes,
No,
$20.
that's not right, boy. You need to. This should be about at least $50 a volume. Could we raise it to that, or do you not want
Well,
to do that?
I appreciate that, but yeah, I think I wanted to make it accessible,
So
and so
$20, did you say?
$20, and that gets a person the entire thing. So right now, there's the first four chapters are already there for them,
Yep.
and then as each chapter is produced, it goes into their account and they can download it, and eventually there will be 6 to 8 hours worth of audio. And but for those who are hearing this or listening to this on Clarion, your site there, if they put in the coupon code Clarion, CLARION, there's an extra $5 off, so it's only $15 for the
That
entire thing. So that's $5 a volume.
that's shocking and wonderful. I'm so grateful. What a gift to the not just the body of Christ. Like it's much bigger than that in the sense that I know a lot of people out there who would not even identify as Christian who are certainly Jesus followers, right? And
Yes, yes,
I know Christ following New Agers, Christ following Buddhists, Christ following Muslims, Christ and yes, even if you're a Christian, I suppose you could like uh, that we're truly getting in a sense it's the primary material. No, not in a sense. It's the primary material. This is a
yes.
translation. This is an this is a translation of of the gospels, of the four gospels, and I just it's the thing. It's one of the things I'm most excited about right now that I'm involved in, and that I got to collaborate just as a consultant.
Oh,
That was delicious, man.
well, it makes a difference for me because I mean I have a background where I can at least, I mean, I know where I'm headed. I know what I'm doing. I have a degree in biblical languages in Greek,
Mm,
and so I can read that original, and then I've got all kinds of dramatic background. So I put all that together, but I wanted another ear, and your studies are much more recent as well as wider than mine, and I wanted you to be able to say, okay, you're either on the right track or you're not. And you've given me ideas for even some lines which have helped. There's a particular line that I have to give you credit for, and it's after when the disciples first meet uh, Simon the Zealot, Shimon the Zealot, um, and Matthew, Matityahu, the tax collector, is already with them. And so when they're getting on the boat, of course, Matthew doesn't want the tax collector, the zealot, to be on the boat with them, and so James, Yaakov, he uh, he says, well, you better watch your back because he could stick a knife in your back pretty quickly. That's not exactly how he says it, but that was an idea from you, and I like those kinds of just little things that make it real, you know.
yeah, yeah. I do have a question and to do with the names. So that is
Yes,
something people experience as new. They don't, the names that are used in the audio are not what they would see in their English Bible. Can you tell
yes.
us about why you did that and
Yeah, I did the Hebrew pronunciation of the names because again I wanted it to feel like you're being brought into a different world, a different land, setting, and hopefully it doesn't take too many people out of it. I have had some people say, well, that at first it kind of took me out, but then I think if they stick with it and they learn who they are, it helps
Yep.
because you don't feel like you're following an Americanized or British Jesus or Canadian. You don't feel like it's not that thing. It's Yeshua. You're following Yeshua of Nazareth, and you the character that's listening, and you become a character. You can be anybody. Nobody says your name. At the
Hmm.
very first, they ask. You know, Andreas asks the Andrew. Andreas asks the listener, by the way, what is your name? And before you can say, then
Oh,
John,
yes, yes.
there's Jesus. And so throughout it, you could be, and I hope that it's something that it doesn't matter whether you're male or female either. You can feel like you're there. So
Well,
yeah,
they'll definitely, women will definitely feel like they're there when it comes time to the discovering the empty tomb, for example,
yes,
the women that do. And
hmm,
then and then there's those intimate moments, whether it's male or female, but the intimate moments where it's one-on-ones that Jesus has. and
yeah,
and I suppose that's another reason why I love Come and See, is because it's this is not the Christianity of stadiums. This is the Yeshua who had one-on-ones and thought
yes,
that important in just a 3.5 year ministry maximum.
yes,
Like why is he wasting time with the one? Well, because that's what he does, and we are the one in that moment.
right,
So
right. And I hope if somebody listens, my goal, my dream at the end would be for somebody to take a weekend and spend those 6 to 8 hours of listening, just kind of like a retreat, go through that entire life and then say, is this the Jesus that I really am following? You know,
mhm.
is, or am I just following like I said, a redacted Jesus or a filtered Jesus of some kind?
Or a projection of myself. I must
Yes.
say that's one of my experiences of listening to this is um, I feel like we need to do quality control between the Jesus of the Gospels and the Jesus in our hearts. You
Uh,
need both. Because you can read the Jesus in the Gospels through a bad lens
yes.
and misinterpret him, but also you can experience the Jesus in your heart as a projection of, Prozac Brad or something,
Right.
and the two, the gospel text and the Jesus in my heart, it's an interdependent kind of quality control witness. Um, what Come and See does is it brings those together. I am meeting Jesus in my heart, but I'm meeting the Jesus of the Gospels in my heart, and not only. And what it does is it pushes back against assumptions I have, where the text calls me to undergo the tensions Jesus brings to the table instead
Mhm.
of just sanitizing those away, and to have sort of a sterile mini version of the gospels in
Mhm.
my head that avoids all those hard sayings. And you
Yes.
just don't let us away with that, and neither does Christ, I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah. And no matter where you're coming from, whether you're a very conservative believer or a more progressive believer, you tend to pick and choose the Jesus that you want. And
Absolutely.
that's, yeah, I don't want that to happen. And I'm trying to make this where uh, anyone who, whether they're a believer or not a believer or whatever, if they just want to experience Jesus, the life of Jesus, the person of Jesus, that's what they're going to get. And
Yes.
it's not a particular brand of Jesus at all. It's just the Jesus of the Gospels.
As best we can, that's what's come out. That's
Yeah,
very, very good.
yeah.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much for your part, because that's making a difference, and hopefully I'll get some more scenes to you fairly soon because I've got some ideas going.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Well, and thanks for chatting. It's been wonderful to open some of this out with you in person like this, and hopefully people will click the link and apply the coupon and
Yes,
start
yes,
listening. Get your headphones together because that's really the way to do it.
yes,
Um, don't
absolutely.
don't save time by listening without headphones. It's like close your eyes
Hmm.
and and enjoy the surround sound.
Yes. All right.